kind of out of nowhere, because with all this talk, we're capping the Browns victory, and we'll get to that later on in the show. The Cleveland Guardians have hired a new manager, kind of the one that people weren't really talking about. There was some rumblings beforehand, but the biggest name was Craig Counsell. And we're not getting Craig Counsell now. We've decided to go with Stephen Vogt.
Good.
I mean, good. Okay, we'll get to your thoughts in a second here, but I want to get some information out of that. I mean, the Guardians hiring a 39-year-old first-time manager whose first taste of coaching on a big league squad this year was this past season as the bullpen and quality control coach for the Seattle Mariners. He, of course, had a 10-year career prior to this, was a two-time All-Star with the Oakland Athletics. He also played for a number of other teams, including the Atlanta Braves, with which he won the 2021 World Series championship. So yeah, this was a guy that had been getting some talk as to being a potential manager in the future. I had heard some rumblings throughout the hiring process, obviously with all the candidates that we were potentially going through. I mean, it's not an out of nowhere hire, but it's kind of one where you're like, oh, okay. It's a culture shock from going from a longtime manager, the all-time winningest manager in franchise history, to this guy who's really just getting his first taste of managerial status. And you've kind of spoiled your thoughts on it before, Mitch, but I want to hear why you think it's a good hire for Cleveland.
Well, first off, let me say it's a good hire because we didn't take Craig Counsell. And it's nothing against Craig Counsell coaching wise. I actually think he is a good coach. $40 million. Highest paid coach in baseball. Mitch, tell you what, could you name me off all the important series he's won as a head coach in the playoffs? Okay, I'll wait.
The 1997 World Series, the 2001. No. I know.
As a coach, I'm still waiting. Oh, nothing. So he wanted us. He wanted the Cleveland Indians Guardians organization to give him $40 million, which has only ever been done, by the way, 5 times in the history of our organization to players. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't. Our payroll 2 years ago was $41.67 million. This guy wanted to double the payroll just for himself. He's not done anything to warrant that kind of money. I'm shocked the Cubs gave him that money. Good luck over there. I think it would have been hilarious if he went to the Mets and then flamed out just like every other Mets manager. Okay, I'm done with my Mets talk for the day. Either way, I think the Guardians, I don't want to say dodged a bullet, but like, you cannot be giving a manager that has, if this was Bruce Bochy, I'll hear it out, right? If this is somebody that's won multiple World Series, I'll hear it out. Craig Counsell has done nothing, right? His biggest accomplishment was as a player, which so happened to be against us. Now you look at Stephen Vogt. He has no experience. He's had 1 year on a major league coaching staff. Well, actually 2. I don't know if you've done the read on The Athletic, which is one of the top, in my opinion, one of the best, sources there are for articles. So Stephen Vogt got hurt a couple years ago and actually interned as a manager with the Milwaukee Brewers under Craig Counsell because he wanted to get into managing. He retired after 22. Last year, he was the bullpen and quality control coach for the Seattle Mariners, his first year as a coach. So now in steps this 38, 39-year-old man to replace Terry Francona. Those are huge shoes to fill. I'm not going to get too high, get too low, because I don't think it matters who was going to be hired as the coach unless this front office makes moves in the offseason that need to happen, right? I think last year we took a step back from 2022. We saw some holes in the lineup. We saw where we need to replace. Guys need to stay healthy. The one thing I really like about Stephen Vogt, reading the articles on The Athletic, this is a guy who could connect with multiple personalities. That is always a giant thing as a manager. You remember Trevor Bauer and Mike Clevenger here. Not always the easiest for Terry Francona to connect with, right? Those were two. Like, Trevor Bauer was so outgoing with his personality. Mike Clevenger kind of kept to himself, was what people like to say a hippie, whatever it is. I like that Vogt was able to capture the room in his interview. Chernoff and Antonetti loved it right away. Now it seems like Tito was a part of this interview process too, which I absolutely love, because this is a guy that you're not going to do better than, at least right now.
Yeah.
I also love how young he is. And that's not a shot at any of these old managers, but I think when you look at how young our team is, it is there is the factor of you're able to relate a little bit more to those guys. Terry Francona being as old as he was is one thing because he's been there, done that. hiring another coach that is near Terry Francona's age or within 10 years that has not done that, I don't want to say it's hard to buy in, but it gets hard to try to be able to rally around what he wants, where Stephen Vogt's going to come in here. He's going to try to connect with all these players. He is able to relate to them saying, oh yeah, I faced that guy 4 years ago too. You know what I mean? Like, just give you real life examples and whatnot. I am intrigued to see what the staff looks like. So we know Sarbaugh is gone. We know two others are gone. From what it seems, Sandy Alomar Jr. will be back. And from what I'm able to gather, Mitch, it seems like he is always going to be here for the rest of his career, unless he so happens to want to take a managerial duty somewhere else. There are the people, though, out there, Mitch, and I want to bring this up, that think Stephen Vogt was brought on with no coaching experience because of how this team is ran. I don't want to use the word puppet, but there's people out there saying, is he a puppet because, you know, he's going to do what he's told to do, which is fair. Terry Francona didn't always do what he was, or didn't have to, because he's just that great of a manager with that experience. There is worry. There's worry with every manager you go hire, right? I mean, except for Terry Francona, I feel like, or Bruce Bochy,
Yeah.
or even Joe. I look at Joe Madden. His career's kind of fizzled out after the 16 World Series with the Cubs and Angels. He gets canned. There's uncertainty. I'm not going to get too high, though. I'm certainly not going to get low. I think the Guardians could have done way, 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 way worse. I'm going to give Vogt the benefit of the doubt, but you cannot put every single piece of this on Stephen Vogt if this front office stands pat again this offseason, Mitch, because if this team does not improve in certain areas, then this is a coach that is handcuffed immediately in year one.
Well, I'm happy you brought up the topic of how young this team is, and that the manager they're bringing in can connect with a number of personalities, because we're one of the youngest teams in baseball, if not the youngest average team in baseball. I think bringing in a 40-year-old manager can be productive. You're not having like a ton of guys who are in their early to mid or even late 30s who are still playing, who are getting these massive contracts, being like, why do I have to listen to you? You were just playing with me 2 years ago. That this doesn't make any sense. That I can kind of see. As far as, you know, whether or not he's a puppet, I mean, most managers, especially first year time managers, are going to be more susceptible to front offices wanting to make moves over them because they have that power over them. And unfortunately, in some cases, they abuse that power. So I don't know. It's a fine hire. It's a fine hire. I don't have any hard feelings about it. This isn't a shocking hire. Maybe a little surprising, but not shocking. I mean, what was shocking was the Chicago Cubs moving on from David Ross. And
Yeah.
I mean, I shouldn't say it's not like he was this manager that was kind of just kept going up and up and up to the point where we thought, oh, he's going to be the guy. But Chicago made a run at the end of the season after the deadline. They fizzled out in the last week to miss the playoffs, and now they're going all in on Counsell to make him. I mean, we mentioned the numbers that was reported by Passan, by the way. 5 years, $40 million, $8 million a year, which Stephen Vogt I think got a 3-year deal according to reports. This would make Counsell not just the highest paid manager in the league, but the highest paid manager in baseball history, besting the $7.5 million annual salary commanded by famed former New York Yankees manager Joe Torre during the heyday of the early. This is a guy who won 4 World Series in a 5-year period, and he didn't get as much as a guy who got ousted by the Arizona Diamondbacks. And again, this is not trying to like. I'm not trying to be personal towards Craig Counsell. This guy has proven he can lead a team. He can lead a team to the postseason. That's a lot of investment for a team. I guess it's the Cubs trying to I mean, obviously every team's trying to recapture the success of winning a World Series championship, but they must be really desperate if they think this team can be, because some of their players are reported to not be coming back. I thought they're at least they're going to become free agents.
Yeah, you're spot on. And that's the other thing is originally, Mitch, when this opened up and we saw the coaches that were applying and we saw the coaches the Guardians were interviewing, I loved the thought of Craig Counsell because he would be leaving Milwaukee, which is very similar to the same structure of which Cleveland has to work with in terms of they don't have the highest payroll. It is not a top 5, top 7 city in which players want to come to, which, you know, you're just wrong there because Cleveland rocks. But then to demand that money, I don't think you can't justify it to me, in my opinion. Now, teams can spend their money however they want to spend their money. but he has no track record of anything other than just making the playoffs and maybe winning the series here or there. It could it be now that he's going to Chicago because that is a city people want to go to? We know all of the history of Wrigley Field. We know the Cubs will open their pocketbook. Sure. And maybe it works out. But you're right. This team last year, Mitch, was a team nobody expected a lot from. They got hot. They were right in the thick of that playoff race, and they fizzled out the last week of the season. It surely looked like David Ross finally had his footing going for the Cubs and then canned out of nowhere. I really, it was out of nowhere.
I'm going to give Council a little bit of a credit because I went back and looked at the numbers. I had not realized he had been a manager for so long in Milwaukee.
Yeah. Yes.
What was it? 9 seasons, 5 postseason appearances, 3 NL Central titles. Did make it to the National League Championship Series back in 2018, so we can give him that credit. They lost to the Dodgers, who ended up losing to the Red Sox that year in the World Series. So the guy's made deep playoff runs before. I think it's more so his negotiating tactics proved to be worthwhile because the Cubs were willing to give him the deal that he wanted, or a similar deal to what he wanted. It wasn't the Mets, who I guess went on to Carlos Mendoza, and I don't really have much to say on that. I mean, Mendoza's had some experience before, but I believe he's a first-time manager as well.
He is, and that's the other thing is the Mets had Counsell in for an interview. It seemed like the Mets like Greg Counsell.
Yeah, and they have the money to do that.
They certainly do. Steve Cohen just put out a $50 million plan to redo the area around Citi Field. This man has all the money he wants. Going off the names, they've struck out. I'd say the Mets did so far in managers. It could work out though, Mitch. I think sometimes the things that work out the most are sometimes the names that you don't know. I think it's gone like that in the NFL. It's gone like that in the NBA, college football for sure. You have to wait and see. But the added pressure now, although a first-time head coach, he was the Yankees bench coach. He should understand the pressure of winning in New York to a degree. He should be able to feel that from when he was with Aaron Boone and on that Yankee staff. You want to talk about managing personalities. This dude's job is about to be very, very difficult. And I'm not saying that because of all the players in the Mets, but you have some big time players. You have all-stars. You have MVP candidates. You have a fan base that is furious right now because you let Jacob deGrom walk, and then you got Scherzer and you got Verlander and you traded them both. There's going to be a lot of pressure. It's not fair to say it, but at some point he's already going to be on the hot seat because this is a team and fan base that wants to get over the hump of historic collapses, of historic blown leads in the playoffs, and just win. And they've not been able to do that now for a couple of years, especially since they acquired Lindor from us, because we got Lindor, we have deGrom, we have all these guys that can't stay healthy. There's going to be a lot of pressure on the Mets now, and we'll see, because we also know the free agent class this offseason is not the best in terms of top talent. It's Shohei Ohtani, which it's been known at times that he wants to stay on the West Coast. Mm-hmm. Marcus Stroman, JD Martinez, like these aren't the free agent classes that we're used to sometimes in MLB, where there's big name after big name after big name. This is a watered down free agent pool. So we're going to have to see how creative the Mets can get. We'll have to see how creative the Guardians can get, because I think there's a couple guys out there that I'd like the Guardians to go get.